Hello lovely people. Today I'm going to be trying to decide between some of my favourite books and I don't think I'm ready.
Sophie Vlogs.
So today I'm going to be doing the reread, rewrite, burn tag. My friend Mark sent me Murphy Napier's take on this video and he was like, you should do this. And I was like, oh, how exciting. It's really nice that he wants me to do this video. And then I watched the video and I watched her lose her mind trying to pick between her favourite books and I was like, oh. But inside this little teacup are some of my favourite books. I tried to go for a mix of like classic favourites, so favourites like childhood favourites and stuff like that, and then some more recent favourites that I've read, just to like, you know, challenge me. So I'm going to do 5 rounds, and each time I pick out 3 books, and then I have to decide whether I want to reread, rewrite, or burn them. Number 1 is the Iliad, a classic, and I have to do this. The Count of Monte Cristo, and The Bear and the Nightingale. See, this is interesting because I love all 3 of these books. The Iliad, extremely well-known, foundational piece of epic Greek poem, tells the story of part of the Trojan War. I love it very much. It was very much, I wrote my dissertation on it. Big fan. Count of Monte Cristo I read on my Kindle because it is a beast, but it is potentially one of my favourite classics. I actually want to do a reread even though it's horrendously long. I read it when I went to Paris and I think that really helped. It tells the story of Edmond Dantes, who is framed for a crime he did not commit and is imprisoned for it. He sort of breaks out of prison and reinvents himself as the Count of Monte Cristo, and then he sets forth to seek revenge on those who've done him wrong. The Bear and the Nightingale is like a Russian-inspired fantasy. This first book follows Vasya. She lives in this very small village. She's very connected to nature, and then also the domovoi and these little magical beings that most people don't see anymore, but she is connected to, and she sort of doesn't stick to the confines of what she's expected to be, and shenanigans ensue. I love all 3 of these books, obviously that's why they're here. Interestingly, I feel like there are aspects of all 3 that I potentially would rewrite. Okay, rewrite is the Iliad. I would take out book 2. Catalogue of the Ships, don't need it. Have read it all the way through in multiple translations when I was studying it, but it's a lot. It's a lot of listing of both. So I say rewrite the Iliad. Then that leaves me, my god, that leaves me whether I have to pick whether to burn The Bear and the Nightingale or whether to burn The Count of Monte Cristo. I'm going to reread The Count of Monte Cristo, and I'm going to burn The Bear and the Nightingale, and I cannot justify it. I don't have any reasoning other than what my gut is telling me, and my gut is telling me that I thought The Count of Monte Cristo was wild, but then this, I openly wept over books in this series. Oh, and this one is so atmospheric. This first book, I would say, is a bit slow. The next 2 books in the series definitely pick up a pace. Oh my god. Oh dear. Oh dear. We're gonna stick to it. I went with my gut, and I'm just gonna keep with my gut, and I'm gonna burn The Bear and the Nightingale. I'm gonna keep The Count of Monte Cristo. Okay, next set. So we have Rebecca. Every time I'm like, oh, I love this book. It's like, yes, I chose all of these books because I love them. So we have The Lord of the Rings. And, oh, I dropped it. And we have The Black Flamingo. Oh my god, these are all wildly different. Rebecca follows this nameless narrator who marries this man called Maxim de Winter and then goes back to his massive country house called Mandalay, and she's sort of haunted by the ghost of his first wife who died. I love this book so much. I love Daphne du Maurier. Well, I love most of Daphne du Maurier. Some of her books I've definitely not got on with, but Rebecca and stuff like that, just, I love it. I love it. The Lord of the Rings, obviously, very famous fantasy. I'm sort of counting it as 1 because I know it was kind of intended to be read as 1, and also my bind-up is 1. Obviously, this tells the story of Frodo and the Fellowship of the Ring, who go to Mount Doom to destroy the One Ring. So much more happens. Before I read this, I was really worried that I wouldn't like it because I really love the films. They're a really iconic part of my childhood, and I was worried that this would not live up to it. But actually, I loved this. I even liked, the songs and the Too Much History. I even liked Tom Bombadil, and my dad would disown me if he heard me say that, but I even enjoyed that because I was like, who are you, Tom? What's going on? I loved it. I actually loved it. And then finally, The Black Flamingo. I read this much more recently, and I loved it, and I sobbed at the end. This tells the story of Michael, who is half Cypriot, half black, and it sort of follows him like from childhood until sort of university, as he's sort of like negotiating his identity, whether that's like his sexuality, his mixed race heritage, stuff like this, and then it sort of follows him as he gets into drag, and the Black Flamingo is like his drag persona. I loved this. It's told in verse, which is a form that I am really enjoying lately, and the concept of being a young queer kid and reading this and seeing yourself, and I loved that. Like, there's a poem at the end of this, because Michael writes poems, that just made me cry. I might have to reread The Black Flamingo. I don't think I can burn this one. I think this means too much. I don't think I can burn that one. I think I've got to reread The Black Flamingo. And then I have to decide between these. I'm not sure which one. Okay, how would I rewrite these? Let's do it that way. I mean, obviously, with Lord of the Rings, I've rewritten it. There's, like, definitely some stuff in here that, like, you could take out. It's a very long book. There's a lot of songs. There's a lot of tales. I could probably take something out. I don't know how I would rewrite Rebecca. I do think that Daphne du Maurier's writing develops as she goes on. I'm so torn, and I keep being, in my head, I keep going, just burn Rebecca, keep Lord of the Rings. But then I'm like, burn Lord of the Rings, keep Rebecca. Oh no. I think I'm gonna burn Rebecca and keep Lord of the Rings. I'm trying to think about, like, influential. Like, if this didn't exist, there are so many other things I love that I think would also not exist. Whereas if this didn't exist, I would be really sad not to have this, but I think other things I like would still exist. I don't know, we're just going with it, and I might regret this. I might want to do that the other way round, but, like, that's the whole point of the tag. I don't know why I thought I wouldn't have a crisis making this video. But on to the next round. Pride and Prejudice. Great. Love that book. Love it. Catherynne M Valente's Fairyland series. Oh, and A Hatful of Sky. Oh my god, oh my god. Pride and Prejudice is a classic. Tells the story of Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. One of them has too much pride, one of them has too much prejudice. Can they make it work in the face of all these odds? Spoiler alert, they do. The Catherynne M Valente's Fairyland series, I've lent out my first book of this series, so this is the, I think, third book. This is one of my favourite middle grade series of all time. It is so magical. We follow September, who is taken away on the Green Wind to Fairyland. She meets a Wyverley, who is half wyvern, half library, called A through L, because he knows all of the things in the library from A through L, and they have these adventures. This is one of those children book series that, like, is absolutely magical to read as a child, and then you read it as an adult, and it's just like, oh, I'm sorry, did you rip my still beating heart from my chest with the emotions? Words don't describe how much I love it. And then A Hatful of Sky. Oh no. It's by Terry Pratchett. It's part of his Discworld series. The Discworld series is obviously very, very big, but there are sort of like sub-series within it, and you don't have to read them necessarily. I have been reading my way through Discworld in publication order just because I want to, but initially the Tiffany Aching series is the ones that I initially read as a kid, and I love them so much. Again, words don't describe how much Tiffany Aching as a character means to me. So A Hatful of Sky is the second book in the Tiffany Aching series. I could have picked any of them. I just picked that one because it was the one that first came to mind. Tiffany Aching is a little witch. She's I think she's 11 in A Hatful of Sky. She is wonderful as a heroine because, the first book in the series, We Free Men, is like the fairies take her toddler brother, and she, armed with like a dictionary and a frying pan or something, like goes to get him back. And she's joined by the Knack-Mack Seagulls, who are these like tiny wee Scottish pixies, and like shenanigans ensue, and it's so great. And I love Tiffany so much because she is really like a flawed heroine. Like, she's selfish and all stuff like this, but she turns it into strength. Like, she has this whole thing about like planting your feet on the ground of where you're from and being like, you don't get that, that's mine. And I love it. I love it. I love it. Why must they fall like this? I'm going to reread A Hatful of Sky because it meant too much to me as a child, and I don't think I can change it. I'm going to rewrite Fairyland by Catherynne M Valente, specifically the fourth book, I think it is, in this series, from memory. I haven't done a reread because I lent out my first book and I've been waiting for it to come back before I do a reread of the series, but obviously plague year, I haven't seen people to give it back to me, so it's on hold. But like the fourth book in this series has a different protagonist, and I remember it not being as strong, so I would use this reread opportunity to rewrite that fourth book. And that means that I'm burning Pride and Prejudice, which feels like sacrilege because I do love Pride and Prejudice. It's potentially my favourite Jane Austen. I also really like Northanger Abbey just because I thought it was really fun. Pride and Prejudice like gets me though. Like the sheer romance of some of those lines, I can't. And I'm Pride and Prejudice trash, and yet look at me, here I am, burning it. Round 4. Da 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 da. We have Piranesi, a recent read. We have the 5th season. Oh boy. And A Spark of White Fire. Okay then. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke is a very weird book, and a lot of people won't like it. We follow this guy who lives in the house, and the house is really strange. There are like statues everywhere, endless rooms, tides that ebb and flow and rise and fall, and like every week Piranesi hangs out with this guy called the Other. As you read this, obviously shenanigans ensue. This is one of those books that, like, if you're happy going into a book and just embracing the fact that you're not going to know what's going on for a while, but everything will eventually become clear to you, you will like this book. If you don't like that type of reading experience, it's probably not for you. I really loved this because I loved that process. I felt like this was in dialogue with The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis, which I enjoyed. And also it felt like one of those books that I could come back to time and time again, and I would notice different themes and pay attention to different stuff and that sort of thing. The 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, I did not shut up about this book last year because I loved it so much. It really, like, revitalized me, I think, in some ways, in my reading. This is the first book of a trilogy. We're set in this world where we have these people called Origines who have the power to, like, control the earth. Also, every now and then there are these things called the 5th season, which is like a cataclysmic event that really sort of humanity just has to like endure it. We have 3 different perspectives in this, and we follow them. That's all I'll say. Spark of White Fire I have lent out to my mum, and this is a science fiction sort of retelling inspired by the Mahabharata and other like Indian epics and that sort of thing. Our main character is like this, she's like a princess of this planet, but she was sort of like sent away and hidden when she was a child because there's this prophecy that says she'll bring doom upon things, and at the start of the book she's like stepping up to take her place. I loved it so much. It's like real, like the sci-fi that I like really connect to. There's a lot of political machinations. There's a lot of like deep human emotions, but then also like the gods are present. There's this big like wider divine scale, and then this closer like really human emotive scale. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to reread Piranesi, because I think if I was to rewrite Piranesi I would ruin it because it's also perfectly formed. I'm gonna rewrite the 5th season. But how? Oh my god, I don't feel like I can rewrite any of these 3 books. I don't know. Maybe there's some bits that I could cut out of this. I don't know, but I'm gonna rewrite this somehow, and I think I'm gonna burn A Spark of White Fire, but that deeply hurts me to do because I really loved that book. Oh my god, we can't rethink the things when we've said them. We just have to do them. Otherwise, what are we gonna do? I don't know. Next up is Howl's Moving Castle. I read that on my Kindle very recently. The Gift of Rain and Raybearer. Okay, so Howl's Moving Castle I read on my Kindle. It's by Diana Wynne Jones. I gave it 5 stars because I had a magical time. You might know it from the Ghibli film, but the book itself is very different. We follow Sophie Hatter, who is the oldest of 3 sisters, and thus she believes she will have a very uninteresting, boring life. She gets spell put on her which makes her age into an old woman, and so she like goes off into the world and she bumps into Howl and his moving castles, and shenanigans ensue. The Gift of Rain by Twan. This tells the story of Philip, who lives in Penang in 1939, and it follows this friendship he strikes up with this Japanese man called Endo. It's been a while, yes, Endo. And Endo teaches him Aikido, but then like throughout the duration of this book, it spans a lot of time. It's looking at the Japanese occupation of Malaysia in the Second World War, and it's looking at the way that these like ties between these people, like you know, they have a very strong bond, but also the country is occupied, you know, stuff like that. It's a bit heavy. Raybearer is another one that I read on my Kindle. Our main character has been raised by her mother. Essentially, her mother wants her to kill the prince, but the only way to get close to the prince is to become part of this like his like council, that they're all bonded, and once you're bonded into the council, you like explicitly like cannot kill the prince. And so it's another one of these that has like political machinations and like really, really strong like ties and bonds between people. I got so immersed in it. I thought it was such a like interesting, exciting world building, and like real like these bonds between characters. I really like felt them. Again, it's another one that is the first book of a duology, and I haven't read the other one yet. So obviously, I don't quite know where the next one's going. Maybe I should have just stuck with series that I have finished. Okay, I'm going to rewrite Howl's Moving Castle because I was really intrigued by like the fact that Howl is just a guy from Wales who has somehow come into this world and magic and stuff, and I would rewrite it to give me a bit more information on that, because I would love to know more. Maybe more is expounded upon in the other two books, which I also haven't read, but that's how I'm gonna rewrite it. I'm going to reread Raybearer because I thought it was brilliant. I had such a fun time with it, and that means I'm gonna burn The Gift of Rain. This book made me cry, and I thought it was really beautifully written, but apparently I'm burning it. Remember that I was like, we don't get to do take-backsies. That's not how this works. Okay, I think I've done 5 rounds, but I realise that I have 3 books left in this little thing, so we're just going to do an extra bonus round, which leaves us with Beyond the Deepwoods, Legendborn, and I've forgotten what this one is, A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Great, just 3 of my favourite books in the world. Beyond the Deepwoods, this was my favourite book as a child, 100% my favourite book as a child. I cannot tell you how many times I reread not just this, but the entire massive series. I haven't read any of the newer books, actually, that have been released, and I've been meaning to do a series reread of this, but, like, words don't describe how much this book was loved by me as a little wee child. I did not give you a plot description of this. This follows Twig. Twig has been brought up amongst the wood trolls, and he thinks himself to be a wood troll, but we know he's obviously not. He looks nothing like a wood troll. One day, when he's going on this journey through the deep woods, he strays from the path, which no wood troll ever does. Thus begins this like adventure through the deep woods. There is danger, there are interesting weird creatures, and like he really finds himself on this journey. It's Legendborn, one of the best books I read last year. We follow Bree. Her mother recently passed away in an accident, so she's really dealing with like a lot of grief from that. She like goes to this university, and essentially she becomes involved in this secret society that is all to do with like King Arthur. So there's a real like playing around with the King Arthur mythos. There's a real also like examination, not just of like Bree's own like grief that she's working through, but also like intergenerational trauma that comes from being descendant of enslaved people, and especially like existing in this campus that has very definite links to slavery. I loved this so much. This is another one that is a duology, and the second book's not out yet, so again, I don't know how everything will play into it, but I loved this. And speaking of things I loved, A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. This is the first book in a sci-fi series. We're following the Wayfarer, and it's like crew. This is very much like character-based sci-fi. It's all about like the bonds between these people. There is also this like wider, they're doing this like dangerous mission and stuff like that. I don't know. Okay, we're just quick firing it. I'm going to reread Legendborn. I can't rewrite this. I don't know if there is anything. Oh, I've thought of something I would change. Editing Sophie here. I realised what I was about to say is kind of a bit of a spoiler, so I just wanted to insert myself in. I haven't named names, but I am mentioning a plot detail that happens near the end of the book. So if you don't want to know anything, just skip ahead until this version of me disappears. The rewrite I would do, there is a character death near the end of this book, and I would like to undo it because it made me very sad. Then Do I go for one of my favourite science fictions of all time that I really deeply love, or a book that meant so much to me as a child? I think I'm going to reread this one because this meant so much to me as a child. There's like a real moment at the end where like Twig really like claims his identity, and like that meant a whole lot to me. Like, so I'm gonna reread that one, which means I'm gonna burn a long way to a small angry planet. I might not stand by this on an edit. I might disagree with myself. I feel mildly delirious from having put myself through this. If you're watching this, Mark, I hope you're satisfied. I would love to know what decisions you would have made in my place. Please do leave a comment and let me know down below. I don't know what else I can say. I feel like I've made some real crimes in this video. I already maybe regret attempting to rewrite Legendborn, but I just don't know. Anyway, I hope you're having a lovely day. I'll see you next time for something where I'm hopefully less, like, intensely emotive.